It was supposed to be invisible. No cameras, no briefing notes, no official mention in the court circular. Yet the moment Catherine, Princess of Wales, quietly entered a private legal chamber inside Buckingham Palace without Prince William at her side, something shifted across the monarchy. By the next morning, senior aides were whispering behind closed doors, security schedules had been altered, and King Charles himself was reportedly left deeply unsettled, because Catherine had not come seeking advice. She had come seeking protection. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. At first, palace officials reportedly tried to dismiss the entire situation as routine administrative business. That was the word quietly circulated among selected staff members inside Buckingham Palace only hours after Catherine's arrival had been logged through a restricted side entrance normally reserved for constitutional consultations and high-level state discussions. But according to multiple royal insiders, the explanation immediately began falling apart the moment aides realized Prince William had not accompanied him. His wife. In royal protocol, that absence mattered more than anything else. Catherine was not attending a ceremonial review, nor was she participating in one of the countless internal briefings that normally passed unnoticed through palace corridors every week. This was something different, something deliberate, and those working behind the scenes appeared to understand the gravity of it almost instantly. Reports suggest Catherine arrived shortly after mid-morning under unusually discreet security arrangements, with only a very limited protection detail aware of her exact destination inside the palace complex. Several constitutional advisors and private royal solicitors were allegedly already waiting when she entered the chamber, while select administrative staff were instructed to leave the surrounding corridor entirely vacant for the duration of the meeting. Even among senior courtiers, the level of secrecy reportedly triggered immediate concern. Meetings involving future queens were not uncommon, but meetings shielded at this level logged under heightened confidentiality protections and allegedly withheld from certain senior officials until after proceedings had already begun, were viewed very differently. One palace source would later describe the atmosphere as cold, tense, and deeply unusual, while another claimed aides spent the remainder of the afternoon trying to determine who had authorized the consultation in the first place. What made the situation even more explosive was the timing. For months, whispers had quietly circulated through royal administrative circles suggesting growing strain behind the polished public image surrounding the Princess of Wales. Nothing dramatic enough to trigger public alarm, nothing visible enough to disrupt appearances. But according to insiders familiar with Kensington Palace operations, subtle tensions had reportedly been building beneath the surface for far longer than anyone outside royal walls realized. Senior staff reshuffles, increased privacy around Catherine's internal schedules, carefully managed communications between households. Tiny changes that seemed meaningless individually, yet deeply unsettling when viewed together. By the time Catherine stepped into that legal chamber alone, some insiders allegedly feared the monarchy had already entered dangerous territory. And then came the detail that reported. Lily left King Charles most shaken of all. Sources claim the king was not informed about the consultation until after it had already started. Inside the monarchy, where hierarchy governs nearly every movement and major decisions are traditionally filtered upward through carefully controlled channels. Such a development was viewed by some as nothing short of extraordinary. Different interpretations of the situation quickly emerged behind closed palace doors. Some believed Catherine simply wanted private legal clarity amid mounting pressures surrounding the future of the crown. Others feared something far more serious that the Princess of Wales no longer felt. Entirely protected by the institution she had spent years defending with unwavering loyalty. And once that possibility began spreading through royal corridors, the silence surrounding the meeting suddenly became far more alarming than the meeting itself. Because behind the calm expressions, rehearsed appearances, and carefully managed royal routine, a far deeper question had now begun haunting Buckingham Palace. If Catherine had truly reached a point where she felt compelled to seek independent legal protection without even future king beside her, then what exactly had been happening behind those palace walls for all these months? And as whispers intensified across the institution, one truth became impossible to ignore. But what truly shook the king was not Catherine's silence. It was the possibility that she had finally stopped trusting the system designed to protect her. For years, Catherine had mastered the royal survival skill few outsiders ever truly understand. Endurance through silence. She smiled through scrutiny, endured endless pressure, and protected the institution even when it consumed her privately. But according to growing whispers from inside royal circles, something inside Kensington Palace had recently changed. The future queen was no longer simply enduring pressure. She was beginning to document it. And that terrified people at the highest level of the monarchy. For more than a decade, Catherine had carefully built an image that appeared almost unshakable. Calm under pressure, disciplined under scrutiny. Loyal to the institution even during moments that reportedly left her emotionally exhausted behind closed doors. Palace insiders often described her as the stabilizing force within a monarchy repeatedly dragged into turbulence by scandals, family fractures, and growing public distrust. While other royal figures became consumed by conflict, Catherine allegedly chose restraint. She rarely reacted publicly. She rarely allowed frustration to surface. And according to those familiar with the culture inside Kensington Palace, that silence became one of her greatest weapons. But silence, especially inside the monarchy, can only survive for so long before it begins turning into something else entirely. Over recent months, reports suggest senior aides started noticing subtle but deeply significant changes in Catherine's approach to palace operations. Meetings that once flowed through broad staff channels reportedly became restricted to a far smaller group of trusted individuals. Internal correspondence was allegedly reviewed more carefully than before. Sensitive discussions involving succession planning, constitutional responsibilities, and future public positioning were increasingly handled through tighter circles with limited access. At first, some within the institution dismissed the shift as a natural response to the growing uncertainty surrounding King Charles's health struggles. But others quietly feared Catherine was preparing for something much larger. Because according to multiple palace whispers, the Princess of Wales had stopped assuming the system would automatically protect her interests. That realization reportedly sent anxiety through senior royal households already struggling under mounting internal pressure. Charles's illness had not only raised questions about the king's long-term capacity, it had also intensified the silent battle over the future direction of the monarchy itself. Different factions within palace operations allegedly began positioning themselves more aggressively as discussions surrounding William and Catherine's eventual reign grew impossible to avoid. Some senior figures reportedly pushed for tighter adherence to traditional structures controlled by the old guard, while others believed the future survival of the crown depended on modernization, public transparency, and a stronger partnership centered around the Prince and Princess of Wales. Catherine, according to insiders, found herself trapped directly in the middle of that invisible war. William was reportedly supportive throughout much of the tension, but palace sources claim even he struggled to contain the competing forces surrounding the institution. The future king could offer reassurance privately, yet he could not fully silence the machinery of hierarchy, influence, and historical loyalty operating behind palace walls. That reality allegedly left Catherine increasingly cautious about who she trusted. Some reports even suggest she began quietly relying on only a handful of aides and advisors whose loyalty she believed extended beyond institutional survival alone. And it was within that atmosphere of uncertainty that private legal consultation reportedly entered the picture. According to interpretations now circulating through royal circles, legal advisors were allegedly asked to review constitutional protections surrounding the Princess of Wales, future authority structures, and the complicated dynamics tied to succession planning. But what truly alarmed insiders was not simply the existence of those discussions. It was the growing belief that Catherine had started preserving records herself. Correspondence, internal communications, administrative exchanges, details that some feared could become deeply significant if Palace T. Nations have been involved in various conflicts ever escalated publicly. Inside the monarchy, documentation changes everything. Silence can be denied. Rumors can be dismissed. But records create permanence. And once whispers emerged suggesting Catherine had begun carefully documenting sensitive matters, senior aides reportedly realized the situation had entered dangerous territory. The palace, however, continued projecting calm to the outside world. Public appearances remained polished. Official statements remained controlled. Yet beneath that carefully managed stability, insiders claim fear was spreading through the institution at a remarkable pace. Because if Catherine had truly reached the point where she no longer relied entirely on the monarchy's internal protections, then the crisis facing the royal family was no longer personal. It was constitutional, emotional, and potentially historic all at once. And as palace insiders scrambled to understand what Catherine was preparing for, one question quietly spread through royal corridors: what exactly had forced her to seek legal advice alone? The moment King Charles learned Catherine had met privately with palace legal advisors without notifying him first, reports suggest. The atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace changed instantly. What began as confusion quickly turned into something far more dangerous: fear. Because within royal history, private legal consultations rarely signal family disagreements. They signal preparation. And according to several palace administrative whispers, Charles immediately understood the symbolism of Catherine acting independently from the institution itself. For a monarchy built on hierarchy, timing, and controlled communication, the implications were reportedly staggering. Sources close to palace operations claim the king initially believed the meeting involved routine constitutional matters connected to future planning around William and Catherine's eventual transition into senior authority. But that assumption allegedly collapsed the moment he realized the consultation had not passed through the traditional channels normally required for discussions of such sensitivity. Catherine had not only acted quietly, she had acted separately. And inside Buckingham Palace, separation from the institution has always carried dangerous meaning. According to insiders, emergency conversations began unfolding almost immediately after Charles was informed. Senior aides reportedly moved quickly to assess who knew about the meeting, how much information had already spread across royal households, and whether any details risked reaching the press before palace communications teams could regain control of the narrative. What deeply unsettled officials was not simply the existence of the consultation itself, but the growing realization that Catherine may have intentionally limited institutional oversight. Some reports suggest private secretaries spent hours attempting to reconstruct timelines surrounding the meeting, while constitutional advisors allegedly warned that even minor leaks could trigger a public relations crisis capable of damaging confidence in the monarchy during one of its most vulnerable modern periods. The pressure surrounding Charles reportedly intensified because the crown was already operating beneath the weight of uncertainty tied to his health struggles. The king, according to several interpretations emerging from royal circles, had hoped stability would define this chapter of his reign. Instead, insiders claim he now feared instability was quietly spreading beneath the surface of the institution. And itself. Catherine's immense popularity among the public only made the situation more delicate. Unlike past royal disputes where sympathy fractured across competing sides, the Princess of Wales had carefully cultivated an image of discipline, sacrifice, and reliability over many years. That public trust reportedly gave her unusual influence inside palace dynamics. And according to some senior courtiers, that influence made her independence deeply alarming to those tasked with protecting the institution from internal fracture. Comparisons soon began emerging to previous moments in royal history where silence concealed growing distrust behind palace walls. Some insiders reportedly recalled the dangerous emotional distance that developed during earlier royal crises involving control, loyalty, and institutional protection. Others feared the monarchy was entering another period where appearances no longer reflected reality. Because while Buckingham Palace continued presenting unity publicly, whispers behind closed doors allegedly painted a far more fragile picture. Several administrative figures reportedly worried that Catherine's decision to seek private legal consultations signaled no rebellion, but cautioned a quiet attempt to protect herself before circumstances inside the institution became harder to control. And if that interpretation proved true, then the implications for the future monarchy could become enormous. Charles himself was said to be deeply disturbed by the possibility that trust inside the royal structure was beginning to erode at the very moment continuity mattered most. Reports suggest the king feared invisible fractures were forming between generations, between palace households, and perhaps even between the institution and the very figures expected to carry it into the future. Some insiders claim Charles became particularly concerned about how the situation could appear if details emerged publicly. A future queen privately consulting legal advisors without notifying the reigning monarch would inevitably fuel speculation that deeper conflicts existed beneath the carefully managed surface of royal life. And inside a monarchy that survives largely through perception, speculation alone can become dangerous enough to reshape power itself. Yet even as senior courtiers allegedly worked to calm internal panic, the questions only multiplied. Why have Catherine acted now? Why had the consultation been handled with such extraordinary secrecy? And why, according to growing palace whispers, did the Princess of Wales appear more focused on institutional protection than personal reassurance? Those questions reportedly lingered over Buckingham Palace long after the meeting had ended, creating an atmosphere many insiders described as tense, uncertain, and increasingly difficult to contain. Because beneath the silence, a larger realization was beginning to form inside royal corridors. But the deeper palace officials looked into the situation, the clearer it became that this meeting may not have been about one conflict alone. It may have been about the future balance of royal power itself. Behind the polished ceremonies and carefully controlled smiles of royal life exists a reality the public rarely sees. The monarchy is built on power, proximity, and survival. And according to multiple interpretations emerging from palace circles, Catherine's legal consultation may have touched all three. Because as King Charles's reign faces increasing uncertainty, the quiet struggle over who shapes the next era of the crown has reportedly intensified, behind closed doors. For generations, the British monarchy has depended not only on bloodlines and tradition, but on carefully managed transitions of influence. Publicly, the institution presents continuity, stability, duty passed gracefully from one reign to another. But privately, insiders claim every approaching transition creates invisible battles between competing visions of the crown's future. And now, as concerns surrounding King Charles's health continue casting uncertainty over the monarchy's long-term direction, palace figures are reportedly becoming increasingly aware that the next royal era may already be taking shape behind closed doors. At the center of that transformation stands Catherine. Quiet, controlled, but suddenly impossible to ignore. According to royal observers, the Princess of Wales has gradually become one of the monarchy's most trusted public figures during a period when confidence in the institution remains fragile. While scandals, family fractures, and years of internal conflict weakened public faith in parts of the royal structure, Catherine reportedly emerged as a symbol of discipline and stability. Palace aides allegedly began recognizing that real identity long before the legal consultation ever took place. Crowds responded differently to her appearances. Public sympathy reportedly deepened during moments of pressure. Even critics of the monarchy often viewed Catherine separately from the institution itself. And inside Buckingham Palace, that level of influence carries enormous significance. Because popularity inside the monarchy is never merely symbolic, it becomes power. That growing influence, according to insiders, has intensified tensions between competing palace factions already positioning themselves for the future reign of William and Catherine. Reports suggest some senior traditionalists remain deeply committed to preserving older systems of hierarchy, control, and internal authority established across previous generations of royal governance. Others allegedly believe the monarchy can only survive if William and Catherine are given greater independence to modernize how the institution functions publicly and privately. Those competing visions have reportedly created increasingly tense internal dynamics, particularly as Charles's reign faces mounting physical and emotional strain. And somewhere inside that atmosphere of certainty, Catherine's private legal consultations suddenly became far more than a personal matter. It became symbolic of a larger struggle unfolding beneath the surface of the crown itself. Sources familiar with palace operations suggest the legal discussions may have involved future constitutional responsibilities, protections surrounding Catherine's role as future queen, and concerns about institutional vulnerabilities during a potential transition period. While no official details have emerged, insiders reportedly fear the Princess of Wales may be quietly preparing for scenarios the palace itself has not fully stabilized internally. Comparisons have even been drawn to Queen Elizabeth II's famously meticulous transition planning, where every detail surrounding succession, authority, and continuity was managed years in advance to avoid uncertainty during moments of institutional vulnerability. But according to some interpretations now circulating through royal circles, Catherine's consultation appeared different, less ceremonial, more cautious, almost defensive in nature. That perception reportedly placed Prince William in an increasingly painful position. Palace insiders claim the future king remains fiercely loyal to his father while also deeply protective of Catherine amid growing institutional tensions. Yet the closer William moved toward the center of future succession planning, the more difficult it allegedly became to balance both responsibilities without conflict emerging beneath the surface. Some reports suggest William privately understood Catherine's concerns more than senior officials initially realized, while others claim he feared confronting certain palace dynamics directly could destabilize an already fragile environment surrounding the king. Whatever the truth may be, insiders agree on one point. The pressure surrounding the future Prince and Princess of Wales has intensified dramatically in recent months. Meanwhile, the reaction among senior traditionalists reportedly grew more anxious with every passing day. Because Catherine's consultation did not resemble panic, it resembled preparation. And within the monarchy, preparation changes the balance of power long before any official transition ever occurs. Palace officials allegedly attempted to contain speculation, minimize discussions internally, and reassure nervous administrative figures. That stability remained intact. But the secrecy surrounding the meeting only deepened suspicions that something far larger was quietly unfolding behind palace walls. And while officials desperately tried to contain the whispers, the silence surrounding Catherine's next move only made the crisis feel more serious. Royal insiders have seen private disagreements before. They have seen succession anxieties, internal rivalries, and carefully hidden tensions stretching back generations. But according to several observers familiar with palace operations, this situation feels different for one reason alone. Catherine acted quietly, strategically, and entirely on her own terms. And in royal history, that is often the moment everything begins to change. Inside Buckingham Palace, emotional reactions are often easier to manage than calculated silence. Anger can be redirected. Frustration can be denied. Public disputes can be buried beneath official statements and carefully staged appearances. But restraint, especially deliberate restraint, creates a different kind of fear within the monarchy. And according to growing whispers from senior royal circles, Catherine's handling of the legal lack of attention unsettled palace officials precisely because she appeared calm throughout every stage of it. There were no visible confrontations, no dramatic fallout, no signs of emotional collapse. Instead, insiders claim the Princess of Wales moved with a level of precision that left even experienced courtiers deeply unsettled. Several palace staff members reportedly expected the growing pressure surrounding Catherine to eventually produce visible cracks. After all, the future queen had spent years balancing public duty against relentless institutional demands, all while navigating an increasingly fragile royal environment shaped by health concerns, succession uncertainty, and internal division. Yet instead of reacting emotionally, Catherine allegedly became more disciplined, more careful, more controlled. According to insiders, that transformation became impossible to ignore once reports emerged suggesting she had independently sought legal clarity before making any future decisions regarding her role inside the monarchy. To some within palace walls, the consultation no longer appeared defensive. It appeared strategic. That distinction reportedly changed everything, because inside royal culture, strategy signals foresight. And foresight implies preparation for outcomes others may not yet fully understand. Sources familiar with palace operations claim senior advisors quickly realized Catherine's discretion was unlikely to be impulsive or symbolic. It was allegedly a calculated signal that she intended to fully understand her position, responsibilities, and protections before the monarchy entered whatever difficult period might lie ahead. Some insiders even suggested the Princess of Wales may have reached a point where quiet preparation felt safer than blind institutional trust. And once that interpretation began circulating privately, anxiety inside Buckingham Palace intensified dramatically. Outside palace walls, however, public reaction reportedly moved in a very different direction. As whispers surrounding the consultation slowly spread through royal commentary circles, sympathy toward Catherine appeared to deepen rather than weaken. Observers increasingly viewed her not as a disruptive figure, but as someone attempting to navigate extraordinary pressure with dignity and caution. That growing public support allegedly created another layer of concern for senior officials. Because throughout modern royal history, public emotion has often reshaped palace power far more quickly than insiders expect. And according to some commentators, Catherine's quiet restraint made her appear even more credible amid mounting speculation. She was not demanding attention. She was avoiding it. And paradoxically, that made the story impossible for people to ignore. Comparisons soon began emerging to earlier moments where royal women quietly altered the course of the monarchy through patience rather than rebellion. Different interpretations surfaced across media circles and among palace observers, with some recalling how subtle decisions made behind closed doors had historically transformed royal power structures long before the public understood their significance. But insiders reportedly believe Catherine's situation carries unique weight because it is unfolding during a period of unusual institutional vulnerability. Charles's reign remains overshadowed by health concerns. William stands increasingly close to future leadership responsibilities. And now, according to palace whispers, the Princess of Wales herself may be reassessing how much trust the institution, Ian, truly deserves. What reportedly unnerved officials most was Catherine's refusal to escalate publicly. There were no leaks from her camp attacking the monarchy, no emotional interviews, no visible attempt to pressure palace leadership. Instead, she remained composed in public, while quietly strengthening her understanding of the system operating around her. That calmness, according to one palace interpretation, created the feeling that something larger might still be unfolding beneath the surface. Royal commentators have even begun suggesting the consultation could ultimately redefine future palace dynamics by forcing long-avoided conversations about authority, protection, and trust inside the modern monarchy. And if those conversations continue growing privately, the institution may soon face pressures far more serious than a single confidential meeting. Because according to several insiders, the palace is no longer reacting only to what Catherine has already done. It is reacting to what she may decide to do next. And for an institution built on stability, predictability, and carefully controlled loyalty, predict the future with confidence. Uncertainty surrounding the future queen may be the most dangerous development meant of all. But the most chilling part of the entire situation was still to come because insiders now believe this private consultation may only have been the beginning. Now, an uneasy silence hangs over Buckingham Palace. No public statements, no direct denials. No explanation for why the Princess of Wales needed private legal counsel away from even the most senior royal figures. Yet sometimes within the monarchy, silence speaks louder than scandal. And according to palace whispers, the silence surrounding Catherine's meeting has left King Charles more shaken than any public controversy could have. Days after reports of the consultation first began spreading through royal circles, Buckingham Palace reportedly made a deliberate decision to say nothing at all. No clarification was offered to the public. No carefully worded reassurance emerged from royal communications teams. Even insiders familiar with palace operations allegedly found the silence unusual, particularly given the growing speculation surrounding the future queen. Normally, when rumors threaten the stability of the institution, the monarchy moves quickly to contain uncertainty through controlled messaging and quiet briefings. But this time, according to multiple interpretations from palace observers, Officials appeared uncertain whether addressing the situation would calm tensions or deepen them further. And so the silence remained, heavy, calculated, increasingly impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Catherine continued carrying out public appearances with the same composed discipline that had defined her role for years. To the outside world, she remained calm, measured, and unwavering under pressure. But according to insiders, that calmness only intensified private anxiety within royal households. Because while the institution projected continuity publicly, officials allegedly understood that something fundamental may have already shifted beneath the surface. The Princess of Wales no longer appeared dependent on the structures surrounding her. Instead, she seemed increasingly capable of navigating them independently. And inside the monarchy, independence from the institution has historically altered the balance of power long before official changes ever occur. King Charles, according to several palace whispers, has spent recent weeks attempting to stabilize relationships quietly behind closed doors. Sources suggest the king fears allowing emotional distance or institutional mistrust to deepen during such a sensitive period for the crown. Yet those same insiders claim Charles also understands the deeper symbolism attached to Catherine's actions. This was not a public rebellion. It was something far more unsettling for the monarchy. Quiet caution. And unlike open confrontation, caution cannot easily be managed through authority or tradition. It lingers. It reshapes trust slowly. And over time, it forces people inside the institution to question whether loyalty alone is still enough to hold everything together. At the center of that pressure reportedly stands Prince William. Royal commentators increasingly believe the future king has shifted his priorities decisively toward protecting Catherine amid the growing institutional strain surrounding them both. While William remains publicly loyal to the crown and supportive of his father, insiders claim his private focus has become increasingly centered on ensuring stability for his wife and children, above all else. That shift, subtle as it may appear publicly, reportedly carries enormous consequences inside palace dynamics. Because, if the future king begins viewing the institution through the same lens of caution Catherine now appears to hold, then the monarchy may be entering a far more transformative period than officials initially feared. Some palace insiders now believe succession planning discussions have intensified dramatically behind closed doors since the consultation took place. Questions surrounding future authority, internal protections, and long-term governance are reportedly being reviewed with far greater urgency than before. And while no public acknowledgement has confirmed those claims, royal observers suggest the emotional impact of Catherine's quiet independence may already be reshaping how senior figures inside the monarchy view the road ahead. For decades, the institution survived by projecting certainty even during moments of private turmoil. But according to growing whispers from within royal circles, certainty itself may now be slipping away. Perhaps most striking of all is how differently this situation feels compared to previous royal controversies. There have been no explosive interviews, no dramatic accusations, no public collapse of loyalty. Instead, there is only restraint, silence, see distance. And according to commentators following the situation closely, that restraint may ultimately become the defining feature of this entire crisis. Because when future historians look back on moments that quietly changed the monarchy forever, they often discover those transformations did not begin with public scandal. They began with private doubt hidden behind composed smiles and guarded palace doors. Now the monarchy faces growing questions not simply about Catherine, but about unity itself. Can trust inside the institution truly be repaired once doubts begin forming at the very highest levels? Can the crown maintain stability while the people expected to carry its future appear increasingly cautious of the system surrounding them? And perhaps most importantly, what happens if silence inside Buckingham Palace continues growing louder than the institution's own attempts to control the narrative? Because in the House of Windsor, the most dangerous royal battles are rarely fought in public, they begin in silence, behind guarded doors, long before the world realizes the crown itself has started to tremble. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in next one.